You're listening to The Gary Null Show, live from New York City, New York's longest-running radio program on health and nutrition. If you'd like to call in with a question for Gary, call us toll-free at 888-873-4643. And now your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. I'd like to invite you to our program. Today we are going to talk about health and healing. I'm going to give you the latest information on how to prevent a heart attack and a stroke. That's important. But we're going to begin our program with part of our ongoing series. It's a hard-hitting series. It deals with serious issues. The story that the media is not covering. And we will go into this in some depth. Today, how and why the Iraqi war is a defeat for America and Britain. And not only will we make such an audacious statement, but we will support it with the evidence that you will hear in a moment. I've invited Jonathan Steele. He's in London right now. He's a senior roving foreign correspondent and columnist for the London Guardian. And since 9/11, he's been reporting on Afghanistan, Iraq, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He's made many field trips to Iraq since the start of the invasion. And unlike many journalists, particularly those embedded with American and British troops, Jonathan is among the few reporters who has had the insight to perceive the disastrous catastrophe the Iraqi war has become. Not only reporting frequently on Western side, he has also conversed with the Iraqis themselves, even having been kidnapped once by a Shia militia. Therefore, Jonathan brings a unique perspective to the Iraqi situation, which has resulted in a recent book called Defeat, Why America and Britain Lost Iraq. Nice to have you with us today, sir.
Well, thank you for having me on.
I want to begin with something that seems off track, but it is not. Last evening I went to see a movie. When I'm in New York City, and by the way, for those of you, I'm back in my studio in New York City, and you can watch this program over the Internet by going to GaryNull.com, and then you can link to the area on the page in the upper right-hand corner says Watch Gary Show Live. I like to go to art films, some of the foreign films and independent films that I generally don't have a chance to see when I'm elsewhere in America. And I saw one on Dalton Trumbo. Are you familiar with Dalton Trumbo?
I don't think I am, no.
Okay, he was a very important part of America's history. The year was 1947. Senator Joe McCarthy had whipped up the conservative element in America and was a full frontal attack against the liberal press and the liberal groups. He was going after the State Department. He was also going after the Army, the American media, and he really focused his attention on Hollywood. He began to see sympathizers to the Red Menace, the Communist menace in movies, and he was particularly diligent against producers and screenwriters.
Mm-hmm.
During that period of time, Ronald Reagan, who was a prominent actor and with the Screenwriters Guild, stood up to go for exposing any of the Red Menace. And there were others. Robert Taylor, famous actor, did the same. But there were those who decided that it was a front against their First Amendment rights. They had a right to say whatever they chose, whether it was in a book or a screenplay. And who was this Senator McCarthy or anybody else to say they didn't have a right? So they were invited to give evidence in front of a Senate committee, and they asked, "Are you now or ever have you ever been a communist, a member of the Communist Party?" And if they said yes, then it was, "Who else do you know who is a member?" And if they said no, then they could be held in contempt of Congress. And indeed, 10 individuals became the Hollywood 10, were held in contempt. Ring Lardner Jr. and Dalton Trumbo were amongst those. Now, to a person, they no longer could work in Hollywood. They were blackballed. Their lives were turned upside down. Even Dalton Trumbo's daughter, who was just 4 years old at that time, when she went to school, she was ridiculed and verbally abused. America went on a witch hunt, and in fact, many individuals committed suicide. They couldn't work. They were nobody would hire them. And so then the documentary showed the life of what happens when a person who is articulate and principled and intelligent and passionate as a Dalton Trumbo stood up and said no. Now, he refused to answer their questions, and he was sent to jail. There were several sent to jail, and he was sent to jail for a year, federal prison, for being in contempt of Congress. Now, I had a chance to see the play of Dalton Trumbo about 5 or 6 years ago in New York City, an off-Broadway play, which I felt was brilliant at the time. The best off-Broadway play I've ever seen. I've seen hundreds. And this movie is quite simply the most powerful documentary in any movie theater this year. It is a must-see, and there's some good documentaries.
It was about Ed Murrow and all that?
No, that's a movie. That was George Clooney's scripted movie, Good Luck and Good Night and Good Luck.
Yeah, that's also about the McCarthy and
yes,
people who were victimized.
That was a realistic dramatization of what actually happened over there with Edward Murrow and his producer. That was based upon a true story. This was the story of the man who the world forgot the moment he was blacklisted and sent to prison. Now, why this ties into our discussion is that during the documentary, many of the individuals, including people that work with him, are in his movies. Kirk Douglas, who's 90, Donald Sutherland, and a whole group of other actors read from his letters as if they were him, and it was extremely moving. Now, by the way, he did get hired back, and he actually won an Oscar. By the way, it was the first Oscar in Hollywood history that was ever won. When the author of the book was announced that the movie was based upon, no one came up to get the award. And then there was a big controversy. Who actually is this writer? Is this a real person? And then it was determined that it was Dalton Trumbo. And yet years went by, and he couldn't collect his own award, because if he did so, he would show that he was working secretly by being a ghostwriter, and then he couldn't work anymore. So his daughter said that when she saw the announcement of the movie that he won, they were all so happy, and then he said, but I can't accept it because I'll expose myself and I got to feed the family. By the way, he also wrote Spartacus, and he wrote a movie that I'm sure you're aware of, and Exodus.
Oh, yes, of course.
So, and he wrote Johnny Got His Gun, and a lot of other great films. Quite simply, he was one of the most articulate, intelligent men in the history of America. He could hold his best against Winston Churchill or anyone else. And so it's a must-see. Now, jump forward. As I'm watching this film, something occurred to me on an intuitive level. That right now, this week, 2 days ago, we literally destroyed the Fourth Amendment. We no longer have the right of habeas corpus. We no longer have the right of challenging someone who's committed a federal crime in this administration. When the administration of George Bush and its Justice Department and Defense Department worked to break the law by listening illegally to people's phones, wiretapping phones, this law said it's okay to do that. So instead of making people responsible for adhering to the law, we simply changed the law so that the law they broke, they no longer can be held accountable for. And the telecom companies that were engaged in breaking the law, co-conspirators, we now gave them a free walk. They cannot be arrested. None of the people have to show any of the meetings they had. Who did they meet with in the administration to have broken this law? All this was done in the name of fighting the war on terror. Already we